services to events and entertainment. Search by city, search by category, or check out our clearance category for even more savings. Open 24/7. Go to tocbigdeals.com. That's tocbigdeals.com.
The Ride weather. From the Brian Stevens Erie Insurance Weather Center, we'll see a possible shower or thunderstorm moving in today. 50-50 chance of rain, high of 85. Chance of rain 60% tonight, low 71. Chance of rain 40% on Friday, high 89. And then hot on Saturday, high of 92. This is 105.7 The Ride, WUCR.com.
From the 97.7 WAOV studios at 6th and Busserin Streets in downtown Vincennes, it's time now for Legal News and Views. Now, here's Dave Relligan and Jeff Cobb with Legal News and Views.
Welcome to Legal News and Views. I'm Jeff.
Dave here.
And we're happy to be back live here at the Brevard House in downtown Vincennes. And the theme music is almost over. Yeah, there it goes. The corner of 6th and Busserin, and you can come join us if you wish, but by far the most convenient and easiest way is to give us a call, 882-3737. That's area code 812-882-3737. Otherwise, Dave and I will talk about things legally related. Some you may find interesting, some you don't. So if you want us to talk about what you want to hear, call 812-882-3737.
Operators are standing by.
Yes, here.
You may have seen a lot of internet sites were down earlier this week. Fastly, which is the name of the company, was hit by a major outage so a lot of people could not get online to a lot of the popular websites. And apparently, they've tracked it down to one user who changed one setting, a legitimate user, not a hacker, changed something on their computer that caused all of these failures. They say the outage was broad and severe, but the company quickly identified, isolated, and disabled the problem after about 49 minutes, which, if you're trying to get on the internet, that's a lifetime.
Yes.
That's worse than dial-up.
We are spoiled.
The bug had been included in a software update that came out in May. The company is trying to figure out why it wasn't detected during testing. One guy, he said, hey, I wonder what happens if you click this.
It's gone dark. We've been on the air over 25 years, Dave and I, and so we have done an awful lot of stories. I'd like to kind of keep listeners updated. They may recall the wonderful Christmas story of the Santa Ana, California man who killed his wife and then propped her body up on the sofa so that while the children opened Christmas presents, Mom would be there.
You could take photos with her.
He's now been sentenced 15 years to life in prison. William Wallace, 39, of Anaheim, convicted of second-degree murder, killing Zell Preston, age 26.
That doesn't seem like enough time to me.
Well, 15 to life, you'd like to think it's life, but it's probably 15 with good time served.
The state's Liquor and Cannabis Board in Washington said this week it will allow state-licensed cannabis retailers to provide one free joint to adult consumers who receive their COVID-19 injection. They're desperately trying to get a lot more people.
Yeah, one state was offering guns.
One was guns, another one I heard, it's like a lottery from like $1 to $5 million.
And Ohio did a lottery, and
If you get your shot, you might have a chance of winning some big bucks. The program is the latest vaccination incentive. Just days ago, reached its goal of at least 70% of them being vaccinated. The board said it received multiple requests from cannabis retail licenses to help promote the state's vaccination efforts. So, I think you ought to get vaccinated. That's my personal opinion.
you're vaccinated.
I am.
But now that you have a new shoulder, do you have to have it done again?
No, it's microwave and dishwasher safe. I think some states are giving a free beer, or Anheuser-Busch is supposed to give away free beer, 70%. So you're giving away an adult product that could lead to intoxication. Is that really prudent policy?
You're asking the wrong guy.
I do have a new joint, though, by the way.
Yes, yes, you do. Another follow-up story. Just recently, Colonial Pipeline had to pay ransom to a group known as the Dark Side, a criminal enterprise group with connections to Russia. They paid in Bitcoin, and I think the total amount paid was close to $4.4 million in Bitcoin. Now comes the follow-up story. The U.S. FBI and Department of Justice said, well, we got some of that back. 63.7 Bitcoins had been recovered with an estimated value of $2.3 million. Not clear why they don't have it all back, but it appears that, of course, you have to take the Bitcoin and put them in a certain account so that the criminals can access the account. And
To say misguided youth, I'm sure, but go ahead.
but the government now seems to have a way of tracking those accounts and then seizing. This is not the first time they've done it. They have recovered ransomware in a couple other cases. And not sure, again, why they didn't get it all back.
Well, that's similar to the story where an international group of law enforcement came up with this encrypted chat that they marketed to criminals so that they could plan their nefarious deeds and crimes, but the FBI and Interpol and other law enforcement organizations had created this, and anytime the criminals were planning their murders or robberies or drug deals, the law enforcement was getting those encrypted messages. And then they finally pulled the plug on it and arrested hundreds of people. And one of the questions is, so if this works so good, why are you telling us about it? This lady, it probably seemed like a good idea at the time. She's in Texas. The mom said she posed as her daughter to sneak into a middle school to expose security flaws, was arrested Friday. So she went in, criminal trespass, so she's got some criminal problems now. The video shows her entering. She had a hoodie, thick glasses, and a face mask. It's not my Jeep, is it? I stopped. The mom, who says she's 30, impersonated her 13-year-old, went through all the classes and even ate lunch without her mask. And she said she was doing her own social experiment to prove a point. We need better security at schools. Well, if moms are sneaking into school doing that, I think that would point out a security flaw. I'm not sure exactly the point that she was trying to make. Typically, when you go to the school board and say, lock the doors, have security, but now she has some criminal problems she's got to deal with, and that's a great example for her 13-year-old daughter.
Well, a quick story, not necessarily of a legal nature, but I think interesting. It comes from the Gulf of Aden, obviously Islamic Yemen fishermen. A sperm whale floated up on the beach. Normally considered to be a nuisance. Here in the United States, people take a lot of effort to try and get rid of the carcass or so it wouldn't smell, but it created a little bit of a gold rush there in Yemen because sperm whales are noted for their, vomit. It is what is called ambergris, and is used in the fragrance industry for scent stabilization. Now, that's all I know on that. But what I do know is that the amount of the vomit in this case was worth $1.5 million. American. That's pretty good vomit.
So how do you make a beached whale throw up?
I think at that stage, you cut it open and get it out.
While you contemplate that, there'll be more Legal News and Views, 97.7 FM WALV, streaming live on Facebook. Maybe. We'll be right back.
An advertising moment from TOC Media, the original company. Even though competitors like to portray radio as an aging technology, the reality is radio advertising remains an effective tool for reaching consumers in today's fragmented media landscape. Extensive research by the Radio Advertising Bureau reveals a robust weekly audience of radio listeners. Over 90% of Americans aged 12 and up listen to radio each week. Where do they listen? The majority of radio listening occurs in cars, with 73% of adults 18 and up listening while driving on a typical weekday. Second most popular location is listening at home. The number of people listening to commercial radio online now includes nearly 20% of the people who listen each week. There are over 10,000 commercial radio stations in the United States. There are more country music stations in America than any other type, and with over 2,000 outlets. News Talk is second with 1,375 stations. Who's advertising? Major brands such as Verizon, Home Depot, Walt Disney, and Burger King are among the top 20 largest radio advertisers. The largest advertising categories for radio include retail, automotive, insurance, restaurant, and financial institutions. Radio advertising revenue exceeded $19 billion, with over $13 billion coming from local businesses like yours. What should you do? Go online to originalcompany.com. Check on the Ask for Information or Contact button.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
One more follow-up story that we've done in the past. This one actually kind of fascinates me. You may recall there was a Democratic congresswoman named Katie Hill. Katie got in trouble when her soon-to-be ex-husband, Kenneth Heslop, released videos of her, and nude photos of her, with another woman, and the husband claims with a congressional aide. Katie thought she was the victim of revenge porn, which is a crime, and filed a lawsuit in December against her ex-husband and two British outlets that actually published the photos. The judge said, there is such a thing as the First Amendment. You are a public figure, and the photos were related to the story of you finally leaving Congress, so you lose. Oh, by the way, you owe over $220,000 in legal fees to the attorneys for the ex-husband and the newspaper.
That's a sad story right there.
She, by the way, has announced she's going to run for Congress again.
Yes, I'm sure her campaign ads will be people lined up to see. Barnes & Thornburg, big Indianapolis law firm, had a partner. Alec Beck left the firm after he filed a lawsuit on behalf of the MyPillow CEO, Mike Lindell, who's a big pal of President Trump, and has been in the news lately. He's been sued by the voting machine people because of things he said, which they claim have cost them billions of dollars in business. And he's countersuing, saying, well, your fake lawsuits are costing me a lot of business. He alleged that the voting machine companies were weaponizing the litigation process. Barnes & Thornburg said that this partner is no longer with us. He filed the lawsuit without getting the okay from the law firm, and we're withdrawing as local counsel. So I don't know the inner workings of the partner meetings, but that would be a very high-profile, politicized lawsuit, and you would want your partners to say, this is a great idea, go for it, or, yeah, it's toxic, don't touch it.
No.
So he says he's going to stay on the case.
Barnes & Thornburg does have its major office in Indianapolis, but it also claims
It's international.
offices in China and everywhere. So I suspect that while the guy that is the founder of My Pillow is wealthy and will pay fees, and they just decided that this is not worth the publicity.
Apparently not. Speaking of lawyers behaving badly,
Yeah?
this lawyer was on a Zoom hearing.
Oh, yeah, I saw this.
In
Australia?
he's going to be fined $3,000 because the judge thought he had flipped the bird during an oral argument. It's in Michigan.
Okay.
And maybe referred for further discipline. He was logged into a virtual argument at the Michigan Court of Appeals, and he wasn't actually arguing the case, but he had been in the lower court. He had tried the case, so he was just there as an observer. Now, when someone made an argument he didn't agree with, the judge thought he had flipped the bird at him, and when asked, he denied it. He said, "Oh, I didn't do that. I would never do that. My screen was messed up, my camera was messed up, and I was just trying to adjust it." And the judge said, "Well, that's going to cost you $3,000 because not only was it unbecoming of an officer of the court, but then you lied about what you did." So.
Well, related to that was the story of an Australian lawmaker, and they were holding Zoom meetings in the legislature, and he claims he was changing his clothes from having been out on a run, which of course he said, "I turned my camera off." No, he didn't, and he was stark naked on the camera, and then he did it again. He took the device while he decided to go to the bathroom, and so he's got a double whammy. Do we have a caller? All right, welcome to Legal News and Views. Caller?
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome. How can we help you?
Concerning local laws and in the field of child molestation, when there's a situation in the county here with a child that had been, had been arrested by an individual, there's the arrest, the confession from the perpetrator. He's pretty old. He's in his 70s or 80s, I'm not sure. And we're in the process of following through and listening and waiting for the courts as far as the prosecution of it. What is the time frame on when you're going to know? Let's get the guy at the court. He's already confessed, and get him prosecuted, get him through the system before he's out here running around driving by the house every day, still out there living his life while the child is scared to death every time he sees the vehicle. Now, that was one question as far as the time frame and procedure, and the other is a civil matter concerning the individual afterwards. Do you have to wait for going after the individual civilly for, the damage caused to child and family, the whole works? Just roughly those areas, if you could help.
You want the criminal and I'll take the civil?
The criminal, the only time limit that really applies to that would be the statute of limitations, and what you describe is that there's been an investigation and maybe a confession, and now the next thing that would happen, if that's accurate, would be a change of plea hearing, where they would go to court and say, "I'm changing my plea from not guilty to guilty," and then the judge would set it for a pre-sentence investigation and mitigating and aggravating factors, and then they would come back in some period of time after the pre-sentence was done and say, "Here's the sentence." But as far as a time frame for that, there's really no time frame. They can ask for continuances, the court could postpone things, there's all kinds of factors that happen. And normally, victims of crimes should be coordinating with the prosecutor's office. They have a victims assistance coordinator that is supposed to keep the families or the victim apprised of, this is what's happening, here's the next thing that's going to happen. And, that you should feel free to reach out to them and say, what's going on with this? I'd like to say, well, once you get a confession, then it's going to be in 30 days. It could be this time next year.
Now, on the civil side, the first thing you might want to think about is a protective order, especially if this older individual is getting anywhere near the child.
Protective order's already in place.
I'm sure that there's a no contact order, and they may be violating that just by driving by.
The next thing is, I think your question was, do you need to wait to file the civil lawsuit? The answer is no. There are statute of limitations on civil cases as well, but with a minor child, sometimes those statutes don't begin to run until the child turns 18.
18 plus 2.
And the significance of that is some of the psychological damage may not show up until later. But you can file now if you wish. The only thing civil cases can do would be to provide damages against the perpetrator. The amount of those damages will be determined by either a judge or a jury, and depending on the age of the child, could be difficult to prove or even know at this early stage what the damages are. So there's a lot to take into consideration, but I hope we've answered your question.
Yeah, quite well. You have that quite a bit. One quick note there on the protective order, where the individual lives like a block from the home from where this incident occurred, and he drives by the house every day multiple times, and we were told that he can drive on a public street. They can't do anything about that, because the biggest deal is, why can't he go another block down and go by around instead of stalking the kid in the way that I feel like he does.
And if that person's out on bond, one of the conditions of bond is to stay away from the witnesses and the victim, but this is a small town, and if you got to go down 6th Street every day, that's where you go, and a more rational person might find an alternative route, but this person may not be clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, David. We'll look forward to listening to your rest of your radio show, and then it's interesting to follow. Take care.
Justice, in a case, is telling the plaintiffs in the court that your baby died so quickly that you didn't really have time to get attached. So it was a wrongful death case.
Yeah.
It was born, did not survive, and they're suing for malpractice. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Mexico responded to the claim brought by the parents of a baby who died only 3 hours after delivery in an Indian health facility run by the government. And they said, you didn't really have time to bond with this, so there is no loss of consortium, no pain and suffering because it wasn't alive long enough. Now that would be maybe a technically valid argument, but as you can imagine, the parents' attorney responded in a scathing response saying, how could you possibly say that?
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the half-hour break here on Legal News and Views, 97.7 FM. Give us a call now over the break, 812-882-3737. We'll be back with what you want to know.
SmartVestor Pro. SmartVestor Pros have been through rough times and can help guide you through all the tough decisions you'll have to make. They'll help answer your questions, diversify your funds, and most importantly, keep your head on during a crisis. Text INVEST to 33789. That's INVEST to 33789, and we'll connect you with a SmartVestor Pro near you.
From the Metronet of Vincennes, 100% fiber, 97.7 WAOV News Center. I'm Tom Lee reporting. The Knox County Council is considering a move to improve roads in need, especially in Knox County. At this week's council meeting, Knox County Commissioner T.J. Brink estimated a need of about $1.4 million to completely repair those roads. Currently, the roads are being patched, and Brink reported the patching is holding up well, but calls the patching a temporary situation. The roads were damaged by a hard freeze earlier this year, followed by a quick thaw. Of the list of affected roads, all but one are in northern Knox County. Council members have not taken action, but are considering the issue. Vincennes Water Utilities officials reported no violations in the latest water quality report. Copies of that report were released at yesterday's meeting of the Vincennes Utilities Services Board. The report covered several different possible contaminants of the city's water supply. Vincennes Utilities General Manager Kirk Bushy reported the water is tested each week by outside labs to ensure quality. And Knox County's cleared another metric hurdle in its COVID-19 statistics. County has dropped from a 0.5 metric to 0 in the latest stats from the Indiana State Department of Health. We've got more at newsknoxcounty.com. I'm Tom Lee, 97.7 WAOV News.
USDA supply and demand numbers today supported corn, bearish for soybeans. This is Hoosier Ag Today's Thursday midday farm market update. Brought to you by Co-Alliance Cooperative, your local agriculture and energy partner for nearly a century. Corn carryout, old and new crop, lowered by USDA today, while soybean carryout was raised and the corn market shot up. It came well off of those highs by the end of trade. July corn $6.99, up 8 1/4 on the day. Dees $6.16 1/2, up 6 3/4. July soybeans $15.44, down 18 1/2, and November up 11 1/4 at 14.59 1/2. And July wheat $6.83 3/4, a penny and a half higher. It was mixed in livestock with August live cattle $118.55, up 27. July lean hogs $121.32, down 17. I'm Andy Eubank, Hoosier Ag Today, Indiana's Farm Network.
All Blue Chip Conference players named in softball and in tennis. I'm Tom Lee with the WAOV Radio Sports Beat. Blue Chip Conference announced its all-conference teams in softball playing in the field and getting Blue Chip Conference honors. Jana Hughes and Reagan Nowoski from South Knox, along with North Knox's Haley Goff. North Knox's Phoebe Worstel was named to the team as a pitcher. 5 Knox County tennis players named Blue Chip All-Conference, including Reve's Lauren Carey, Maggie Early, and Kennedy Fry, and South Knox's Abby Cunningham and Ella Hayes. For the second year in a row, the Indiana Pacers are looking for a new head coach. The team announced that it has fired Nate Bjorkgren after one season. Bjorkgren was hired to replace Nate McMillan, who was fired after not making it past the first round of the playoffs 4 years in a row. The Pacers lost in the play-in tournament in this year's NBA playoffs. That is a check of sports. I'm Tom Lee, WAOV Sports. The Ride weather. From the Brian Stevens Erie Insurance Weather Center, we'll see a possible shower or thunderstorm moving in today. 50-50 chance of rain, high of 85. Chance of rain 60% tonight, low 71. Chance of rain 40% on Friday, high 89. And then hot on Saturday, high of 92. This is 105.7 The Ride, WUCR.com.
And we're back with your news and views. I'm Jeff.
Dave here.
And it's time now for that regularly scheduled of the program known as
Least Competent Criminals.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to Wisconsin, where the police in 2018 got a call from Jessie Krzyzewski, age 37. She said her friend that she shared a home with wasn't breathing and lying on the couch. Deputies arrived to find a pale, unconscious female lying, in a recliner with large amounts of crushed medication on her chest. According to Jessie, the caller, her roommate had been depressed, possibly suicidal, though every other person who knew the woman said, she wasn't suicidal, there was no suicidal, and she wasn't yet. Well, here's why she's least competent criminal. They do an autopsy. they do a screening. They find a fatal dose of tetrahydrozoline. Now, you might say, oh, okay, Jeff, what the heck is that? Eye drops. None of which, of course, were near the body, which had been staged with the crushed medication. Investigators went back and said, Jesse, eye drops killed her, and you staged the scene to look like a suicide. Jesse said, well, that's what my friend wanted. She must have staged her own suicide with the crushed pills. Jesse said that she'd been bringing her friend a bottle of water loaded with 6 bottles worth of Visine, and that it hadn't killed her yet, and she didn't think it would ever kill her. Also, they learned that Jesse had taken about $290,000 from her roommate, so Jesse, is now charged with murder, now set at $1 million. And just maybe a quick second least competent criminal is Jose Molina. Jose says he found a key fob for a van on the ground. He picked it up, got in the van, drove off.
Finders keepers.
So what do you think he's been charged with? Theft? Yeah, probably. But how about improper removal of a dead person? Turns out the van had 2 dead bodies in the back, that the morgue on the van. So Jesse is our second nominee.
So it wasn't kidnapping, abuse of a corpse?
No. No, I don't think Jesse was abusing corpses. So that is our 2 nominees for this week's
Least competent criminals.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Officials in Surrey County, North Carolina, that'll become important in just a second, voted to remove Coca-Cola machines from all government facilities in response to the beverage company CEO's remarks about Georgia's controversial new voting law. So the people in North Carolina were so upset about what the CEO of Coca-Cola said about the Georgia law, they said there shall henceforth be no Coca-Cola machines in any government-owned business. It was passed during a Board of Commissioners meeting on May 17th in a 3-2 vote. So Commissioner Harris provided calling out the company's corporate political commentary favoring the Democrat Party. So the whole voting thing is, I tried to get into a discussion with someone, against my better judgment, if the media called this voter integrity laws, people would say, that's a good thing. I'm in favor of voter integrity as opposed to
voter laws.
No, it's voter suppression.
Oh.
So, I don't think anybody supports Jim Crow laws, Jeff. No, it was Jeff who said that.
No, that's what liberals call it. And, they always say, oh, it was a big lie about Trump saying he won the election. Well, it was a big lie. But it's a big lie to say these things are voter suppression or Jim Crow laws. Everything is biased to the point of, you can just ignore it.
Another dead body story.
All right.
The bride collapsed and died at her wedding.
Ouch!
Her groom then married the woman's sister while her dead body was lying in the next room.
Same wedding?
Same wedding, same family. All right, put her in the next room. I will marry your sister.
We have to be talking some other culture.
A wedding in India took a negative turn when the bride collapsed and died just before completing her wedding rituals. Instead, the groom ended up marrying her younger sister on the same day, with the original bride's body lying in another room. Now that, I don't know how to explain that.
Well, and here's the question. Was it a trade up or a trade down?
The wedding was between a woman named Surbi and a man named Magesh from the nearby village of Nawi. The two were exchanging traditional flower garlands during a ceremony called when she collapsed on stage. A doctor rushed to treat her, later declared her dead. The day's festivities continued, however, because they loved to party, but with a different bride. While her body lay in another room in the house, the nuptials carried on with her younger sister. They said, we did not know what to do in this situation. Both the families sat together, and someone suggested that my younger sister should be married to the groom. So we're sitting around chatting. Oh, what a shame. What did I do with this? We got party, we got ice. How about you?
There is a movie, I guess, called Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Yes, that's true, but there wasn't even a funeral.
A wedding at a funeral.
That might be a deal breaker for most people.
This story, I think, has lots of parts to it and lots of morals to tell. So the basics are a phone, smartphone, iPhone, apparently used by a young woman for explicit photos and videos of herself. And of course, something goes wrong with the phone.
She needs to get it repaired and hands it over to the Apple repairman.
Now, Apple, in this case, had contracted with a company called Pegatron in Sacramento, California. So they weren't necessarily Apple employees, but they were Apple contractors. So who are these people? Well, I think you can postulate that they're nerds. And they run across this kind of
They
stuff.
don't date much, is what I hear you saying.
It's a big deal. Now, as to whether it was encrypted and that they somehow broke the code, it doesn't say, but they ran across the photos. Now, they went to the trouble to find this lady's Facebook, and they posted the pictures and the video on her own Facebook.
Did they at least friend her first?
Kind of insult to injury. And the woman, I think, didn't take her long to figure out exactly where it came from, how it got there, and she sued Apple and Pegatron. Now, Pegatron, apparently not a large business, and so Apple actually investigated, made sure that the two nerds who fixed their phone, or was to fix phone, were fired, and now, according to this, has paid a multi-million-dollar settlement to the woman with explicit photos.
Was it 14 million?
It just says multi here on this story. So, what are the various lessons to be learned? Well, you don't want your explicit photos out there. You might not, number one, might not want to take them on your iPhone because it's going to break and need to be fixed.
This also points out the right to repair, where Apple basically says you have to bring it to us or our contractors to fix it, and if you try to do it on your own or go to someone who's not authorized, you void your warranties and all kinds of things. So
Well, I say the second point might be some kind of encryption. The third point is...
encryption doesn't mean anything to nerds.
All right. But, and then if you want multi-million dollars in an eventual settlement, hey, it may all be worth it.
So what if it's a scam? And she posted these to her own Facebook account and blamed these poor schmucks who got fired.
Well, then Apple screwed up, yeah.
There you go. U.S. military has issued an apology after soldiers accidentally stormed a factory in Bulgaria that produces processing machinery for olive oil during a training exercise. So they're having a warfighter exercise.
Yeah.
Unless they got their coordinates, and they storm this factory in full battle regalia, weapons drawn, and these people are just working on their factory. 173rd Airborne Brigade had been practicing for days how to seize and secure a decommissioned airfield. So I don't know how they confused this factory with an airfield. This included clearing bunkers across the airfield. According to the statement from the U.S. Army Europe, during an exercise on May 11th, the soldiers cleared a building next to the airfield that they believed was part of the training area, but was also occupied by Bulgarian civilians operating a private business. No weapons were fired. So, well, that's the kind of thing where you get the after-action report, and the guy who used to be in command may have some explaining to do.
Let's go ahead and take our third break here on Legal News and Views, 97.7 FM, WAOV, News, KnoxCounty.com. Again, if you call now, 812-882-3737. When we get back, we'll talk about what you want to know.
Get up.
911, what's your emergency?
In an emergency, voice is best. But what if you can't call?
Escalated domestic disturbance reported east of downtown. Be advised, alert was received by a 911 emergency text. Caller is hiding in a closet and can't use her voice.
When the situation is too dangerous to make a call, text to 911 capability now helps Hoosiers. But in most emergencies, voice is still best.
My sister's not breathing. Please hurry!
In the last 5 years, Hoosiers have used text capability in over 1 million 911 sessions. It's a great help to the deaf and speech impaired and to those in select dangerous situations. Thanks to the statewide 911 board, Indiana leads the nation with all 92 counties having in- and outbound text capability. For more, visit in911.net.
It's good to hear your voice. Help is on the way.
911 before you text.
Every 6 minutes, a utility line is damaged by reckless digging. So Indiana relies on 811 superheroes like Steve the plumber.
I contact 811 before I do my work.
Mary the gardener.
Before I plant a tree, I contact 811.
And Mike the landscaper.
I dig for a living, but always contact 811.
Prevent damages or injury. Call 811 or go online. 811now.com.
Sponsored by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, this station, and the Indiana Broadcasters Association.
Barkley, Van Camp, and Robbins, now noon to 3 p.m. at WAOV. It's the perfect blend of chemistry and humor, and what's making the news of the day. It's funny, it's engaging and energetic, but making sense of it all while having fun. Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, 12 noon to 3 p.m. here at WAOV. Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, noon to 3, WAOV.
And we're back, Legal News and Views. I'm Jeff.
Dave here.
And still time for your call, 812-882-3737.
You have an Amazon Echo, don't you, Jeff? At your house?
Echo?
Echo?
Is
You hear an Echo?
Alexa? Is that what you...
This is called, Amazon is building a Wi-Fi network, which sounds good, except they're using your Wi-Fi. It's called Amazon Sidewalk, and the company touts it as a way to help its devices work better by extending the range of low-bandwidth devices to help them stay online. And it does that by pooling neighbors' Wi-Fi to help connectivity for devices that are out of range. The network already includes certain Ring, floodlight cam, spotlight models as of late last year. Compatible Amazon Echo devices will be added to the network on June 8th. Ring Doorbell Pro devices are being added too. So, here's how it works. Let's say you and your next-door neighbor have devices that Amazon has added to the Sidewalk scheme, and neither of you has opted out. Your neighbor decides to put a Ring security camera on their garage, but the device is too far from their Wi-Fi router to get a good signal. Perhaps your router is closer, or you pay for better Wi-Fi. Their camera will be able to send small amounts of data via your Wi-Fi signal. And they don't even ask you about this.
Well, here's a business opportunity. Some programmer will come up with something to put on your Wi-Fi, so they can't do it.
Well, you can opt out. Amazon says that customers' privacy and security are foundations to how it has built Amazon Sidewalk. The network has 3 layers of encryption and its protection to keep customers from viewing data from other sidewalks. That's what they say. Some privacy and security experts are concerned, but you can apparently, if you know about it, you might want to opt out. In the early days of Wi-Fi, you'd see people they'd cruise around looking for an password protected Wi-Fi signal. And
All right. Well, this story comes from Houston, Texas, and it involves a feuding between 2 neighbors and one person's attempt at revenge gone wrong. Patricia Ann Garcia lived next door to Dennis Tuttle and Nicholas, somebody. They had been feuding for some time. Apparently, while under the influence of drugs and alcohol, in January 8, 2019, Patricia came up with this wonderful idea. She decided to call 911. And during the call, she says that her daughter is at her neighbor's home and that they were addicts and drug dealers who had firearms, including machine guns, inside their residence. None of those claims were true. She doesn't even have a daughter. That set in motion the Houston Drug Narcotics Task Force, which 20 days later raids the neighbors' homes, resulting in Tuttle and Nicholas being fatally shot. Well, maybe her plan worked, except that that then produced an investigation as to why people were dying in drug raids and brought out all of the lies. And what does that lead to? It leads to 3 years and 4 months in federal prison for making a false 911 call.
Man asked employees if he could test ride a champagne-colored Cannondale Jekyll Carbon 129 bicycle. The employee said, sure. And within minutes, the man rode off with a $6,374 bicycle and never came back. So they have a surveillance photo of him. They're asking people to help identify him. The theft occurred about 1:30 p.m. on May 13th. The unknown man was in the store for about 45 minutes looking at different merchandise, but ended up in the bike department. After talking to 2 employees, the man took the bicycle on a test run and never returned. That's an expensive bike. You hear about that sometimes with people will test drive a car. And so would that be grand theft bicycle?
I'm sorry, what?
Just like one of my regular listeners.
What did he say? Every now and then, the FBI gets it right, and it appears this may be the instance here. About 3 years ago, they were dismantling a Canadian-based encryption service called Phantom Secure. The main principal in that business decided to work with the FBI and created an encryption service.
I think I talked about this earlier, but go ahead. You have more details.
Well, but 3 years ago, they started encryption, which in the last 3 years apparently has become fairly popular with gangs, criminal gangs, to the point where they didn't even use the encryption anymore. They would use the devices and just speak in plain English. All the while, the FBI was listening. This has now led, just recently, to the arrest of at least 800 people in more than a dozen countries, including 150 workers of Qantas Airlines in Australia. Qantas Airlines hired an individual who was a former bike gang leader who then recruited the other people to use Qantas Airlines to smuggle drugs into Australia. Rough estimate that over 1/2 of the drugs smuggled into Australia came from that particular group of people.
Deshaun McCurdy has been charged with first-degree murder in the shooting death of 31-year-old Christian McDougal. The Chicago Times reported the 40-year-old was held on a $250,000 bail. According to the Cook County Assistant State's Attorney, the customer began arguing with the shooter, who was a barber in the business located in a suburb of Chicago. As the argument escalated, the customer followed the barber to the back part of the shop where the barber promptly shot him. They were arguing about the price of a haircut. He was taken away. He had another barber there who was also arrested because they found a couple of guns in his possession. As a former felon, he was not supposed to have those weapons. So, you probably don't want to argue with your barber about the price of the haircut. Now, the barber says he acted in self-defense because he was going back into a non-public area and this guy was agitated and following him, so we may have a follow-up on that.
Sister Mary Margaret Krepper. She's 79 years of age. Apparently 28 years ago, took the vow of poverty, became a nun, and worked as a principal at St. James Catholic School in Torrance, California. Now it's clear that she's pled guilty to embezzling funds for 10 years until her retirement in 2018.
$853,000, wasn't it?
835. Close.
That was close.
No, see,
a little dyslexia.
So why? What would a nun who has a vow of poverty embezzle? $835,000.
That's the epitome of poverty, using other people's money.
Well, at the same time, she had a gambling problem.
And a monkey.
And apparently she was a bad gambler.
So are you saying she had a bad habit?
Yes, yes, I am. Bump.
Wisconsin, after a roughly 13-mile police chase ended without injury. Wisconsin fireman, the fleeing suspect met with a moving blockade of cows. So this guy had been going on for 13 miles, got in a field, and a bunch of cows just blocked his path, giving the police time to catch up and arrest him. And so tongue-in-cheek, they wanted to give thanks to their bovine unit in capturing this guy.
Teacher in Virginia, Brian Tanner Cross, was physical education teacher in the Loudoun County Public Schools. Loudoun County, back in December, at the end of the year, issued a proclamation telling its teachers that they cannot use certain pronouns to indicate boy or girl. And that in other words, they should only use the gender selected by the child. Brian, in response to that, posted his own that doesn't work for me, and among his various contentions is it's against my religion. A person is as they're born. They can then say there's something else, but they are as they were born. The very next day after he posted, he gets a letter from the school that says, your letter was disruptive. Because of the disruption, you're fired. And he goes to court. The judge says, what disruption are you talking about? All he was doing was exercising his First Amendment rights, and he has been reinstated with full pay. Since then, there's been a school board meeting, and Loudoun has been also confronted by parents because of critical race theory being taught in the schools.
Amazon announced Tuesday that it's going to be more understanding for employee time off, and they're going to stop testing for marijuana at the pre-employment and work drug test. They'll treat it the same as alcohol, and by that I mean that if you had a trace amount, you couldn't obviously show up for work impaired in any way, and if the particular job requires some kind of a federal license, then that would not apply, because Amazon says that they're trying to be more considerate of workers, and the number of states have legalized it, so they're trying to upgrade their policy, and that may explain if you get the wrong package. I didn't order this green leafy substance with the aroma of, what is it, patchouli?
In Peru, at the airport, they give you cocoa leaves to chew.
All right. You don't have to chew stuff that strangers give you, Jeff, just so you know.
Well, no, it's supposed to help you adjust to the altitude.
It does, as you crash on the floor.
Many restaurants will post a sign that says no shirt, no shoes, no service, which went unheeded by Tina Kidred, age 53, in Ocala, Florida. Reasons not yet known, other than she was drugged and alcoholed out of her mind. She takes all of her clothes off in an Outback restaurant, climbs on top of the bar, and then just begins throwing bottles of alcohol, glass, and everything else at everybody in the bar, including the officer who arrives to arrest her. He finally gets her down and arrests her, but I'll probably get her some kind of psychiatric evaluation. But she's not first time. She went to Mojo Grill and Catering Company in the same area while topless.
Deputies had a rude awakening in Wisconsin. They were all staying in an Airbnb. This drunk person had the bad misfortune of breaking into the Airbnb apartment full of cops about 2:30 a.m. One of the deputies heard some crashing upstairs, but thought it was one of his colleagues. The next morning, the group found one of the doors to the property open and started searching the home. They found the guy, and he was, I know there's 30 seconds left. He was arrested. He made a bad mistake.
And this is Jeff, wishing you a good week. We'll see you hopefully next week.
This is Dave, Legal News and Views, 97.7 WOV FM. Thanks for listening.